First tonight, the prospect of elections in Ukraine has seemed pretty far-fetched since the Russian invasion more than 3 years ago and the country's declaration of martial law. So President Zelensky's announcement on Tuesday that he will try and get the law changed in order to hold a vote within 3 months came as something of a surprise. Mr. Zelensky became president in 2019 for a 5-year term, but has remained in place with no subsequent election yet being held. This development comes at a crucial juncture for the country, currently in the midst of pressure to accept a peace proposal agreed upon by Moscow and Washington, but not by Kyiv or its European partners. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from London by the author and international affairs analyst, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz. Good to see you, Dr. Laskiewicz. Did you expect this announcement by Mr. Zelensky that he'll try and get the law changed in order to hold a vote within 3 months?
No, I think it's a very great mistake on his part. So that's why I'm surprised he's done that. First and foremost, if he can change the law about holding elections, then he can change the law about ceding territory. I mean, that's the first obvious mistake in this. Secondly, it's all very well saying going to hold elections, but why say in such a brief time? Because there's an awful lot of work to be done, not least of which is the problem that if the elections are not seen to be held properly, then Moscow will discount them as incorrectly held elections. But to get them right under a war footing, there are Ukrainians abroad, which have fled the country. There are soldiers on the front line. How these people are going to vote is a question. It's not something that can be resolved very quickly. So I'm surprised by both that he said it. And secondly, that he's given himself just, a relatively short period of time to organize it all.
It's very interesting. I wonder if you can put it in context for us, because the announcement or statement, if I could call it that, came after President Trump said he believes that Mr. Zelensky is holding power and doesn't want to run elections. And it was in that context that Mr. Zelensky said it was all nonsense and that he was always ready to hold elections and that he will work to change the law.
Yes, I agree with that. That's precisely about the context. And the context shows that he's been, simply reacted quickly, perhaps even emotionally, quite unnecessarily, which could be a huge mistake. As I understand it, most Ukrainians followed the argument that it would be difficult to hold them now. And whilst that weakens his position, the fact that he's not democratically elected in that respect, the problem is how to hold them properly. So just replying almost off the cuff to Donald Trump's comment, I think is a mistake and unnecessary, and I'm surprised he made it.
So, I mean, in effect, Mr. Zelensky was saying that elections can be held, but not that they will actually be held.
Actually, he seemed to indicate that there was a time frame and that therefore he's quite prepared to hold them. He hasn't said, and here you are correct, precisely he's prepared to hold them, but he's made a huge step towards that. And the implication of his sentence is, yes, that he could go ahead. And therefore, the question now is, what's holding him back? Is anyone holding him back? And so on.
Indeed. And how much of a Russian narrative is this talk of Ukrainian elections? And how much is this also part of American pressure on Ukraine to sign the peace deal that's on the table?
There are those two aspects play a part. First and foremost, President Putin has said all along that President Zelensky is now no longer a president because he's not been elected properly. Well, this is one of the Russian narratives. And indeed, there is some truth in the fact that Ukraine didn't hold elections. However, it's a bit rich coming from Russia, who has had its opponents to President Putin eliminated to be lecturing other people about democracy. But the other aspect to it is that President Donald Trump wants the deal to be signed. And it's quite possible that what President Zelensky is doing is by trying to fob off Donald Trump, saying yes, he's prepared to hold elections, but and therefore not annoy Donald Trump by refusing to accept any proposals.
And I mean, I think you mentioned this earlier, Dr. Laskiewicz, but President Zelensky has said that elections can hold if the US, along with its European partners, is prepared to provide security guarantees. Is that a likely prospect?
I think this is his best part because he has bounced the ball back to the West, in particular to Donald Trump. And quite obviously, neither Europe nor USA could give security guarantees. In fact, security guarantees for what? It's not clear because, of course, the guarantees for Ukrainian territorial integrity are the sort of security guarantees after a peace proposal, are the sort of security guarantees which we talked of up till now. So quite what he means by this is not clear, though politics is by no means a deadly mistake to not be clear. And on the contrary, and here he has now put the ball back into Ukraine, into American and European hands to say, can they provide security guarantees? And that is, I think, the most astute part of his entire proposal.
Well, just talking sort of peripherally, my assumption is that the security guarantees would be needed to ensure that elections actually take place across Ukraine. But, I mean, if the prospect of elections in Ukraine is not realistic, how much more tricky does that make Mr. Zelensky's position? And how much more pressure does that pile on him and exert on him by Washington?
Well, first and foremost, I don't really see how security guarantees, what they mean still, taking elections across Ukraine. But it certainly does pile on the pressure if they cannot now be held on him. The key point is that President Donald Trump wants President Zelensky to cede territory. Ukraine, President Zelensky does not want to do so, and has constantly cited the Constitution as being the key reason. But he's just made it quite clear that he can change at will the Constitution, so to speak, with the agreement of the Parliament and so on. And therefore, in this respect, he has sort of added to his pressure, I think. What is not clear now is where the peace process is heading, because President Donald Trump gives the impression that what is agreed with Russia must now be agreed to by Ukraine. But Ukraine is a separate peace plan, which is as presented to President Donald Trump. So there's another slight air of chaos there.
Right, and might this be, I mean, a new mandate that will strengthen Mr. Zelensky's position? Or is this quite simply not the right time to be talking about elections in Ukraine, given the dangerous security situation there?
It's not only the security situation which is a problem, it's the sheer logistics of it. Many Ukrainians have fled abroad. There is also, at the same time, many Ukrainians are on the front line. The voting, to carry out the voting in this situation is difficult. Moreover, his opponents have accused him of controlling the state media. And the real danger about this election is that Russia will say it was not held properly, which will render the whole exercise futile, even if President Zelensky were to win. If he had won recently in 2024, his president election, then indeed he'd have a very strong position. If he wins it now, that would, as you say, give him a mandate. As things stand, it's very hard to see how, even if they were held, they would actually strengthen his hand, because he already has a strong hand. And therefore, in that respect, I suspect that all this is just one more item of confusion to be added to the situation.
So basically, coming off the back of your assessment there, in spite of Mr. Zelensky's comments, we should not expect elections anytime soon in Ukraine.
I think it is unlikely that they will actually be held at any time soon, but the talk about their being held, I think, will go ahead. And therefore, it's possible some sort of elections may well be set up but then there'll be the whole problem of carrying them out so they're seen to be fair. And in this respect, it's an issue which was previously dead, has now sprung to life and won't go away, but there will be no immediate elections, no.
Dr. Laskiewicz, thank you very much indeed. I do apologize if I made you repeat yourself a number of times, but we needed absolute clarity on these things. Dr. Marek Laskiewicz is the author and international affairs analyst. He was talking to me on the line there from London.